Very little does the world agree upon nowadays, but two things have been determined indisputable facts: that this, the year of our Lord 2020, is a steaming hot garbage disaster, and that women's pockets have evolved into an unacceptable disgrace. Henceforth, I decided that I required a pair of gloriously roomy 18th century tie-on pockets, primarily out of spite, and the fact that said 18th century pocket piece was embroidered onto glorious silk satin in commemoration of this year with the most dainty little actual dumpster fires only made it better. I should note, by the way, that I bought this pre-embroidered from my good friend So Steen, who specializes in historical reproduction machine embroidery, but as is my method, I will be making these up using my favorite historical hand stitching methods, just for funsies. The irony of my refusing to machine stitch a pocket with the literal year 2020 embroidered onto it is not lost upon me, but in keeping with our 2020 theme, all time is meaningless now, and we can do what we want. Within this pocket kit came, of course, the embroidered panel, as well as a small length of cotton twill to use as the back piece of the pocket. While cottons were more prevalent in the 19th century, tie-on pockets could be made of pretty much any spare cabbage one might have to hand. Silks, cottons, linens, wools, even leather. They range from functional and heavily pieced, if not patchworked entirely, to intricately quilted or worked with embroidery according to the wearer's personal taste. So these are really great small cabbage-busting projects for the modern wearer, just as they were historically. This bottom pocket is about 12 inches long and about 8 inches wide at its widest bottom width, if you wanted to draw up a shape for one yourself. Once I have my front and back pieces cut out, I'm just going around and stitching them together with a really fine backstitch. Backstitching is the strongest of hand stitches, and I wanted the pockets to be really durable, as they do need to be able to hold potentially a lot of small treasures, but also to take quite significant wear in the constant taking out and putting in of said things. That only took about an hour to do, and we're literally halfway done with this project now. To finish off the raw edges, I'm just going to bind them with this bit of green velvet ribbon I had in my stash, and that very nicely matches the leaves in the embroidery. I didn't do the thing where I leave the raw seams on the inside and turn the thing out, because the inside of this pocket will be getting a lot of wear, and I wanted these seams to be nice and finished. I figured that binding the edges from the outside was just as much effort as French seaming them on the inside, and there's plenty of evidence of this edge binding used on historical pockets, so I am going with that. This first edge of the bindings is stitched down all around with felling stitches in some fine green silk thread, and I'm taking particular care to ensure that my stitches are small and neat here, since they will theoretically be seen if the pocket is seen. I'm also just binding off the edge of that slit that I've just cut down the center of that front pocket piece. If you have ever had the misfortune of binding stays by hand, you will understand the quantity of pure existential shrieking happening behind this deceivingly tranquil presentation. My ribbon here is perhaps a bit wider than would be ideal. Bindings, especially around the edges of stays, tended to be quite narrow, so 1/2 an inch or 5/8 of an inch wide ribbon would have been more ideal than this 1 inch wide, but in the historical spirit of stash busting, we are sticking with this. Once the front sides of the binding have been secured, I can then fold the ribbons over the raw edges and fell the undersides into place. Yes, this is a piece of straight grain ribbon. No, I did not have trouble getting it to go around the curve. It just took a little bit of easing. This admittedly works much better with narrower ribbons, but almost all bindings I've seen in the 18th and early 19th century garments have been straight of grain, since yes, it is very possible to make it work without issue, and if you're cutting the binding from fabric, straight grain strips waste far less precious material. Plus, there is the small annoyance that bias cut materials tend to stretch, and I want my binding on this to keep my pocket strongly in shape, not to stretch out eventually, especially around those curves where the fabric being bound is also on a bias edge. Having a bias strip holding a bias edge won't exactly do much to keep it in shape. Once I have bound those outer edges, I just need to add a waistband with which to tie this around my waist, and also to finish off that top edge. I'm just cutting enough ribbon to go around my waist and then some for extra tying length. This is once again just felled down across the front, then folded over and once again felled down from the back. The rest of the waistband length is left free for tying purposes, and with that, the pocket is complete. Historically, these tie-on pockets were the predecessor to sewn-in pockets, and were accessed either through slits left in the skirt, or through the space left between the apron front gown. However, pockets could be worn under gowns, just as well as over the skirt to be freely accessed from the outside if one needed particularly frequent access to one's pockets, such as if one were out selling things and regularly exchanging money. This does increase the risk of having one's pockets snatched by some nefarious passing pickpocket, but seeing as I do not presently own skirts with appropriate tie-on pocket slitage, and there doesn't seem to be much risk of pickpocketers in my vicinity, I have decided that I shall be wearing this as an outside garment, I think. In any case, it'll make a really handy companion to my regularly scheduled sewing tasks, which I am very much looking forward to. And guess what? When I bought this pocket from Christine, she very graciously decided to send me an extra. So I will be giving away this spare pocket embroidery as well as the corresponding cotton twill for those of you who made it to the end, if you would like to give this a go for yourself. There's a link to the sign-up form with all further details in the description box below. It is free to enter, and a winner will be randomly selected next Saturday the 21st at noon Eastern. 10 out of 10 recommend respectably sized pockets with or without added dumpster fires. Until next time.